City of Aliquippa, Beaver County exit plan. This is a public meeting that is required for us as we move along with the city towards an exit strategy. Before we get started, we do need everybody to sign in. There is a sign-in sheet. We'll get it around to you. We have to keep a record of everybody who attended the meeting, and then we'll also be keeping a record of anyone for public comments. The purpose of this meeting is for us to talk a little bit about the strategies in the exit plan and to also allow for public comment both by council members and by the general public. Feel free to comment on anything in the plan. Just again, for housekeeping purposes, this was advertised in the Beaver County Times. It was also advertised in the Beaver County Legal Journal as required by the statute. It's also on the city's website for your review, and will continue to be on the website through the month of March. So we will be taking public comments through the month of March. Since 2015, Grassroots Solutions, which is our Act 47 team, has been was appointed by DCED to be the city's Act 47 coordinator. With me here tonight, well, first of all, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Debbie Grass. I am the project leader and also the owner of Grassroots Solutions. With me here tonight is Kathy Clark, who's a member of our Act 47 team. Tim Barry is also a member of our Act 47 team. He provides some labor council advice. And we have various other members who work with operations and finance from time to time. Also with us tonight from the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development is Ed Fosnot, who is the city's project manager and liaison with the department and with the Act 47 team. Before I get started, Ed, do you want, I don't know if you have any remarks or anything?
No, I don't have any comments.
Okay. For those people who just joined us, there is a sign-up sheet going around. If we could have you guys sign in. We need to keep a record of everybody who attended the meeting.
I guess I would like to say one thing, Debbie, regarding the city's NPP project. I think the mayor and Councilman Walker are doing a very good job of facilitating that. They're spending the money wisely, and it's doing good things for the city of Aliquippa.
Thanks, Ed. In our capacity as a recovery coordinator, our responsibilities include the monitoring of the financial progress of the city, providing consultation and advice to the city's elected officials and staff, reviewing and updating the city's recovery plan, and monitoring the city's implementation of the exit plan. So those are our duties and responsibilities, and as I said, we have a whole team that works with the city on all of those issues. I'm going to turn this over to Kathy Clark, who is our legal representative on our team. She's going to go over with you specifically what's required in the exit plan.
Yep. It is the coordinator's recommendation that pursuant to Act 47 and specifically Section 255A4, that conditions are such that a 3-year exit plan in accordance with Section 256 is warranted. So that's why we're here this evening to talk about the exit plan strategies. And Section 256 of Act 47 sets forth the requirements of what an exit plan should have and what the coordinator should recommend as part of the financial condition evaluation and recommend the plan. The coordinator must prepare the exit plan within 90 days of the close of the public record, and that occurred on December 31st of 2018. Contents of the exit plan must include those elements that may be necessary to ensure termination of distress status after 3 years. And those elements include, but are not limited to, the following. The sale, lease, conveyance, assignment, or other use or disposition of the assets of the distressed municipality. Functional consolidation of or privatization of existing municipal services. The execution, approval, modification, rejection, renegotiation, or termination of contracts or agreements of the distressed municipality. However, provisions of this section shall apply to any exit plan adopted in accordance with this subchapter. Changes also must be thought about as far as form of municipal government or the configuration of the elected or appointed municipal officials and employees as permitted by law. So all of these items are part of the exit plan that has been put together and part of what hopefully you'll have comments on this evening.
Thanks, Kathy. So as Kathy said, we did have a public meeting prior to this one in December. I think it was December 11th. The record was open until December 31st on the financial condition evaluation. And what we found at that time was that the city is mostly moving in the right direction and achieving solid fund balances and stability, but that 2 of the past 5 years had resulted in a deficit situation. So we had recommended that we work on that financial stability issue over the next couple years, and that the city then would remain in Act 47, but the final date that the city can remain in Act 47 is June of 2022. So that's an absolute deadline, date. And between now and then, we are required to work with the city to develop strategies that move the city from the current position and the financial condition today to an even better place and with a more stable economic base over the next couple of years. And that's what our exit strategies are really related to. The things that are included in the exit plan, I'll go over them briefly and then we will take public comment. First of all, we want to strengthen the management team. Sam and Cheryl and the council are basically make up the management team. We have a couple thoughts about doing that in terms of strengthening the ordinances around those positions, setting threshold qualifications, continuous training, continuous professional development, and just having the best strong management team that we can have. We do have the luxury of having a team that's been together, been intact, and working together as a team for the past several years. And that's really good because transition is very disruptive. To have the same team working together over those years has been really a benefit to the city. The next thing that I want to talk about were the issue of identifying changes to the structure of government. Well, this is one thing in Act 47 that we are required to look at. We are not required to change the form of government, but we are required to look at the various options and to see if there is a structure that would be more modern, more efficient, more advantageous to the city. And I think in our report, if you read through it and review it online, of the 53 cities currently in Pennsylvania, the 53 third-class cities, most of them have abandoned the third-class city commission form and have gone either to an optional charter or a home rule charter or some other form of government. The reason they have done that is that there are other forms of government where you have more local control and more flexibility. So we want to look at those options over the next couple years and make a decision about whether any of those other forms of local government, you would still be a third-class city, would still be classified as a third-class city, but they might be able to give you some other flexibilities in the way you can tax and the way you can structure your government. So those are some of the things we want to look at, and actually we're required by law to look at. We want to start developing a capital improvement funding plan. Up to now, the city has focused on operations and getting that stable, But as we all know, there are facilities and parks and roads and bridges and other things infrastructure-wise that really should be addressed. We want to start putting that into a capital plan and try to figure out how to fund that plan. We want to look at some things like enhancing revenue generation. There are some options that were introduced in the past couple years under Act 47 that have to do with different types of taxing that may be more stable, that will survive and exit from Act 47 payroll preparations, one of them. Want to look at stormwater management fees because you have a lot of new requirements through DEP and otherwise that you have to meet, and those have to be funded. We also want to look at whether there's a possibility of marketing some of our services that we provide. The city provides very excellent services, and some of those services could potentially be marketed throughout the region. Obviously, we want to look at cost containment, adopting a very conservative budget where we really zero in on projected revenue, really identify all the costs that we're going to address in the year. We want to monitor expenditures. We want to look at are there any services countywide or otherwise where we could save money by partnering, whether it's partnering with an authority like we have with the Water Authority over time, or partnering with another municipality. That helps to save money. The city this year started to use Labor Council for collective bargaining. That's a step in the right direction. We want to continue to do that. I would say that probably, as Ed pointed out at the beginning of the meeting, one of the most successful things that's going on is the whole area of economic development. What I've talked about so far are really kind of operational, everyday, short-term things that we've had to look at to stabilize the financial situation. But the economic development really provides long-term relief. And so the work that's being done by the AEDC, the work that's being done through the NPP, the Neighborhood Partnership Program, the work that we're doing through the Keystone Communities programs and other programs is really what's going to ultimately provide a broader tax base and allow you to be successful in the future. So those things are really, really important from our perspective. We're also going to be embarking on a blight strategy project. And I should mention that all of these opportunities have been funded by the Department of Community Economic Development. And so we have been really grateful and appreciative of the support of our partnership with the state and the funds that they've made available to us. So thank you, Ed. We couldn't have done it without you. Finally, we want to look at developing a legislative strategy. There are some things, that we need to work with the state and with the county from a legislative perspective to move forward and advance and support. The local services tax is one of those. The city, because of their Act 47 status, have the ability and were able to assess a higher local services tax than other communities. Unfortunately, when we exit Act 47, we will lose that ability. That's about $100,000. So we need to find a way to shift that in the next couple years to capital planning and capital fund, or we need a way to lobby the General Assembly to let us keep it. And there is at least one other community that was successful in keeping that when they exited Act 47. However, from what I know about the General Assembly and third-class cities, they have not made that available to other third-class cities in terms of keeping that special taxing ability beyond Act 47. So that's something we should put together a legislative strategy on that. The other thing we want to watch very carefully is the countywide reassessment. That's still in the courts right now, and it will help the city because they would be able to reduce your millage rate if the assessments were current. So we want to keep an eye on that and see, because the city is at its taxing maximum right now. And so if the county were to reassess, you would be able to lower that millage rate quite dramatically. We are involved in continuing to work with the city in terms of additional strategies. If there are other things that we have not mentioned that you think belong in the plan, ultimately this is the city's plan and you will adopt it by ordinance. So if there are things that need to be included, things that you object to, we're willing to listen to it. It's, we prepared the plan. We advertised the plan, we provided it to DCED, we filed it with the city, but ultimately it is the city's plan. And again, the focus should be on exiting Act 47 over the next couple of years. So having said that, we will take any public comments. We do need your name and address, and we would be happy to listen to any public comments at this point.
David Childs, 1810 Grant Street.
Sorry, could you say your address again?
1810 Grant Street.
1810, okay.
I was looking at the exit plan strategies. Line item number 4 says, changes in form of municipal government and configuration of elected or appointed municipal officials and employees as permitted by law. Now, one of those options is home rule charter or which I know we're not going to want to go down to the township or borough. But I did some looking up on home rule charter, and as also stated in here as one of the options. And this has to be done within 45 days, right? Now, and it has to go on referendum, am I correct?
So,
in order to change over to home rule
I think,
charter?
we're confusing a couple things. First of all, home rule charter does not mean that you would go to a township or borough.
No, negative. That's not what I said. I said.
He said we're not going to go to.
Two of the options, for my understanding, what I read, would either reduce to a township or borough, or switch over to a home rule charter. But without even addressing the borough or the township issue, my questions are about home rule charter. We have to adopt this plan within 45 days, correct?
So the record will stay open until March 31st, and then the city has 45 days to adopt the exit plan.
The exit plan. Now, is home rule charter part of the exit plan?
The home rule chart, the requirement to have the discussion about the form of government and whether the city should stay with the commission form of government or whether they should look at an optional charter or home rule. They would continue to be a city. There's, for this instance, the city of Sharon's a home rule charter, Altoona, Johnstown, I could name you a dozen.
My question clearly is home rule charter going to be part of the plan? I understand.
Or the reason why
I don't believe it's going to change the status of us being a city or not. That's just
the requirement to have that discussion is a part of the plan, and it's a requirement of the law. The home rule charter process is actually usually about a 2-year process.
Right,
and that's a separate process from the adoption of the exit plan.
Yeah, if I can make a comment too, there is a requirement that you discuss home rule charter. There is no requirement that you adopt a home rule charter.
Correct.
Right, no, I understand that. But, like I said, there was a lot of ambiguity online about the home rule charter. It tells a lot about the process of adopting it, but it doesn't really explain the mechanism to get to that end result, how it's ran, how it's managed, and part of this this recovery plan. If this is going to be discussed, I also would like it added in there that the operation of a home rule charter, how the individuals on the boards or the groups or however it's managed instead of a mayoral type of organization, how it's going to be managed and what responsibilities are going to be applied to the individuals. I think that should be part of the discussion, because if the people of this community are going to be asked to vote on adopting something like that, they should completely understand what they're going to be changing, what the benefits and what deficits are.
Absolutely, we agree with you.
use this mechanism. I was told to potentially come off of Act 47, and I know a few guys up there, so I'll be making some calls and probably right up there. I gotta go through there anyway and talk to them and see what that process has been like for them as well. But I just, if that's going to be part of the discussion, I think the whole operation and how it's actually managed, not just how you get to that end result, and as far as the ordinance and everything, because there's pages of how to do it, you know, how to adopt it, but there's not a whole lot on you know, the responsibilities of the
So
individual.
if I could just very simply say, there's one way to understand it. So the third class city tells you what you can do as a municipality, and anything else you cannot do.
No, well,
So, no, wait, let me
I
finish.
understand.
Well, let me finish,
I
okay?
figured it out, but I'm just talking about as a whole.
Let me-
When it's asked to, when people ask to vote on it, I just, for them, because I did my homework. I understand
Let me
that.
finish, please, okay?
Okay.
A home rule charter tells you what you can do, and anything that that isn't provided in the home rule chart, you have the ability to do it. So it gives you flexibility. It basically allows you to decide how you're going to tax, what taxes you're going to use, how you're going to structure your government. Now, we're not advocating third class city, optional home rule. We're not advocating any of that. We're saying that discussion, because it's in Act 47, in the exit plan section, is a requirement. So at some point, the team has a discussion with council, and they decide whether or not they want to pursue a change. If they do, a study commission would be elected. The question would be on the ballot: do we want to do this? Do we want a home rule study? And shall we elect a commission? That's the first step.
Right.
Then that commission, which is a citizen commission, studies the issue and brings back a recommendation. And they will have full support from DCED. They'll have technical support. So we're a long way from that. We're just saying in the plan, there is a requirement to look at that as an option. And if you decide that you want to, after talking to Altoona and Johnstown and Sharon and all the third class cities that have already made that decision, that if you decide that's an option, then we will help you with the Home Rule Study Commission. That's it.
No, and I understand. I wasn't saying that this was going to be, done deal. That was a question. Is that part of it? You guys answered it. No, it's just a discussion. I understand. And I understand, as I told you before, about the home rule charter and what, I did a little bit of reading and a little research, but only thing I was asking is when the time comes, and I'm guessing that study will help do that. Once the community group looks into it, they give the layman the understanding of how that home rule charter runs.
Do you want to add?
Not just the benefits of doing it or the deficits, the actual functioning, the mechanism to get from point A to point B. That's all.
Sure, just a quick comment if I can, and you probably know this already, but the only thing that the city can do regarding home rule is put the question on the ballot: do we want to have a study? And people, not necessarily the council can run if they want to, but any registered voter in the city can run for that commission. That commission is the one who develops the charter. So the things that maybe you're looking for wouldn't be there until that commission is formed, and then that's when the people would have to make a decision. But it's a pretty lengthy process, and there would be a lot of information come out before the city made any move like that.
Right.
So does that
And
answer
once
your
it's
question?
formulated in terms of the commission making a recommendation about the government and how it should be set up and how the taxing should be handled, that all has to go back on the ballot again. So it's not a simple, quick process. It's something that you need to be very thoughtful about, look at what the best interest of the citizens and of Aliquippa and whether or not it makes sense. So it's nothing that is going to happen in that 45-day period. It's something that is going to happen possibly over, the next couple years.
It's a good question, though.
Yeah.
I caught on that.
Question, Dwayne Walker, 1228 Main Street. When did Sharon, Altoona, all go, when did they make their changes? 'Cause
Johnstown's been in home rule since it went into Act 47 in 1993.
So it wasn't like something they just changed over based on a plan?
Well, they did, actually, it was in their initial recovery plan, and they made a decision to put together a home rule study commission and go that route. But they've been a home rule community for, 20, 30 years. And Sharon, I believe in the last 10 or 12 years, became a home rule. Altoona, I'm not sure. They've been a home rule for a while, but not as long as some of the others.
What about Carrington?
Which one?
Carrington. Bears, the Clarity Bears.
Oh, Clareton?
That's a short one. That was
Yeah, I'm not sure when they became. We can get you a list
I
of
got a
all
list.
of the third-class cities and what they've decided to do. And I can bring that. I can get that to
So
you.
I want to ask that question because you said, it's not only just to get next up to say, they went into it based on a plan, they was already into it. So if that's the case.
Altoona was.
Yeah, so if that's the case, I just want to know when.
And Sharon's not a distressed community. They just made the decision to go to a home rule charter. And a lot of times it's because of taxing flexibility. Because if you get to your taxing maximums and you have no flexibility, the home rule charter communities don't always have to rely on property tax. They can tweak their deed transfer or EIT or some other. They don't have to rely so heavily on property taxes. So a lot of times a community will make a decision to become home rule for that reason, just to have more flexibility in their decision making.
And then to piggyback off of Mr. Child's thing, that's what I want to know about. What flexibility, you said there's a lot of flexibility, but what does that flexibility look like when it comes to taxing bodies and things of that nature? You said the word decrease, but if you look at the numbers, how much of a decrease could the city afford? So that's what we want to make sure that, all the eyes are being crossed on the T's, because you're looking at a body of work that, again, I mean, you look at the numbers, I mean, it's fluctuating based on a lot of other things that variables we can't control. Some we can, some, but I just want to know what the tax flexibility is. How's that going to affect the city? What flexibility does that mean? What does that look like for us? So we can explain that properly. Even if you have a commission, people still going to ask us. Still going to ask people on council, still going to ask them, they're going to ask these questions about what it is and how it affects us and where is it going to come from, who's going to get it, what these taxes are based on, how it's going to improve our financial situation. Those are the questions that I would like to ask.
Yeah, and every community that I've seen that decided to make that route, and it's not just Act 47 community. I mean, Penn Hills became a, home rule charter. Bethel Park's a home rule charter. Green Tree Borough is a home rule charter. There's a lot of communities that have nothing to do with Act 47 that have made the decision to become home rule charter communities. But it always takes a really, really good public education process, because remember, it goes back on the ballot. And if people don't understand what they need to understand what they're voting for. So there is a very long, very in-depth public education process that usually goes along with a change to a home rule charter, or change to a different form. Yeah, there has to be a public education.
And all those other communities, even the ones that were on Act 47, they have a much stronger tax base than we have.
Right, and the people you just mentioned.
But part of that is because they've had that flexibility.
So, some of them, the city of Farrell, for example, just came out of Act 47. Right. If they weren't home rule, they wouldn't have been able to do it. What it does with the tax, and this might answer your question, Mayor, is, and don't let this scare you because the charter can set limits, but a home rule community by state law has no limits on the taxes. And usually what that translates to is you try to get a balance between earned income tax and property tax. In Farrell, they were able to reduce their property tax because they raised their earned income tax. But their earned income tax is 2%.
And
It includes state. Once adopted, the charter becomes the organic law of the municipality and supersedes any restrictions in municipal codes. Third-class city codes. You don't have
That's
to follow
correct.
those rules. You can reset all your own
You can
rules.
reset it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is my concern.
And that's why you have to have a good commission to make sure that they lay things out that are best. What Farrell's home rule charter may not be good for the city of Aliquippa.
Right.
Understood?
But it wasn't even good for Farrell. It had to bring back that police force.
Well, that worked out pretty well though.
But that's typically not something that's in the charter. Those are typically discussions that are had separate from the charter.
Right.
Those are not, like whether you have a paid fire department, whether you have a paid police department, all of those things are separate decisions. Those are not typically in a home rule charter.
But Farrell, the Farrell governing body, the city council, had to make some tough decisions, as you guys have. You've had to make some tough decisions too. But it brought them back to stability.
But the overall topic of it, just options.
The
We have to
options.
explore all options. We have to make sure we can make the right decisions for the city and residents. So
Right.
I know I've seen it, and I called you.
Right.
We were on the phone for a good while because I started doing research on it. I had a friend at school, Mr. Ciccarelli. He teaches economics, and me and him sat and talked about it during our break. And we went through it, and he was like, pros and cons,
Right.
ins and outs. He was concerned about the school as a whole. When you go to home rule charter, how does that affect them? He had some good questions. And that's what me and you talked about. I asked you those questions
Right.
just to see what it would do. What's the whiffle for school districts when you go to a home rule charter?
I mean, the other things that are required by law that are on sort of the left side of your handout that Kathy went over, I mean, we looked at those too. For instance, the sale of assets, and you can see the city doesn't own any assets. Now, when we did this in Johnstown, I can tell you they had parking structures, they had a golf course, they have a convention center, they have a stadium. So we had to go out and value all those assets and say, should these assets should we have a disposition plan to raise money to help the city? So Aliquippa, when we looked at yours, you have none of those kinds of assets. You have your buildings and you have your parks, but beyond that, you don't have assets that you could sell, that you could pay down pension liabilities or debt, and you don't have any debt. The same with, we had to look at whether the city had contracts that were unfavorable. So when I say contracts, other than collective bargaining agreements are off limits. But if you had entered contracts that were unfavorable to you, we as an Act 47 team have a right to renegotiate or terminate or try to get you better contracts. So those are some of the things that, again, the exit plan portion of Act 47 is relatively new. It was just adopted in 2014. So there's not a lot of experience in working with these. So we're doing, the best that we can in each of our communities to help them move towards an exit.
There's a line item on here, Mr. Miles can answer this question. Right here, stormwater management fees. Did we get an increase, or is this?
That's storm sewer, that's rainwater, gutters, street water. We got an increase on sanitary
On
sewer.
sewage?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's totally separate.
Yeah, and one of the problems is that the state, the Department of Environmental Protection, has been coming down very strongly on communities about stormwater now. So as people fix, the sanitary and get the stormwater out of the sanitary, now you have stormwater issues and flooding issues, and they have a lot of requirements. It's called MS4, but they have MS4 regulations. They're unfunded mandatory requirements, so they're not providing any funding to the city. They're just saying you have to do these things.
So, but stormwater's not even under the water authority.
It is not. It is not.
That's street department, correct?
Yes,
That's it.
it falls
Right,
under the city.
right. So, okay. Right.
That's it.
Just realize this is a new issue that
It is.
that's going on.
It's-
the cities.
Right.
That's when, we're working on the process of changing that, but that is in the city's hands right now. That's why DEP come in. And DEP is slapping fines on people for no reason, so we gotta watch everything that we do. Whatever requirements they send down to us, we gotta do it. If it says clean out your runoff, inlets, you gotta clean all the inlets.
Oh, I understand dam docket and divert, I get that, you know, but I'm just going through line items and just trying to get clarification, so when I get back to my guy and or my wife and try to explain to them what's on, you know, I'll be able to answer all the questions, that's all.
So one of the things that communities have been doing is to look at this issue of stormwater, and if they have to build retaining, pipes, catch basins, replacements, they have been assessing a stormwater fee that pays for that. So it's something, again, because the city doesn't have extra money to do some of these things that are mandatory, we have to look at some of that.
Right, and let's say we had the riverfront, we had that, we still had it in our possession, could that have been like an asset, something we could have sold off if we'd have had that still, compared to what we don't now?
Yeah, I mean, again, if you have assets as a city, what we're required to help you do is to do valuations of those assets and then a disposition strategy. So if you have assets that could be sold, we have to work with you to do a disposition strategy and see if we can get those sold.
Yeah, no, I mean,
some assets have value, some do not.
Right, but my question was, if we'd have owned that, still had that riverfront property,
it would have been.
that's what I'm asking.
Because you got barge landings
Right,
down there, yeah.
ports and everything else. I was just wondering that, had we claimed that and kept it this long, with the tear down and clean surface, would that have been an asset to be sold?
Oh, yeah.
Do we have any other questions? And again, can I have names and addresses now? Any other? I do want to remind people, just one second, I know that everybody hasn't signed in, so if we can pass the sign-up sheet around, we really do need to keep a record of who attended the meeting. Yes, sir.
My name is Carl Lewis. I'm at 1017 or 1726 McMinn Street. I was wondering if all of the questions in this meeting limited to this Act 47.
Yes. There will be an opportunity during the regular public meeting for public questions and comments. This is limited to the exit plan and any issues around the exit plan. Okay, anything else, anybody?
No, just thank y'all from just the hard work y'all put into it. When we have a city council, and the residents don't see all the hard work that goes into it. They just see it, different doing, thinking and assuming different things. I know some of the few questions I like to ask. I don't know the access as far as the exit plan is concerned with financials. How does the city handle financials? Is it us signing checks? Like, how does that? I think we can explain that part of it too. Going into the exit strategy, you mentioned teams of people who handle our finances. I want you to explain to them as far as who handles the financial side of that, and is it just the council? Do we just pop checks and take checks and do all that stuff? Like, how does that work?
No, obviously Cheryl McFarland's here. She's the finance officer. She does a terrific job for the city in terms of the accounting and receivables and payables. Cheryl is obviously supervised by Sam Gill, who's the manager. He's part of the team. And Councilman Walker, who is the head of the finance on City Council. City Council gets a lot of information, on finances. They spend a lot of time reviewing that information, especially during budget season. We work with them to put together conservative budgets that accurately reflect the city's operation. So it takes a team, it takes a village to really move this stuff forward, have the proper controls in place, and to produce the proper reporting that everybody's comfortable with. I do want to remind everyone that we will take written comments until March 31st. If you pick up one of these, I have my office address there and my email if you would like to follow up with any written comments, suggestions, edits. That includes council. If there's anything that you see that we need to fix, we will be issuing a final exit plan. And then, as I said, the city will have 45 days to adopt it by ordinance. Any closing remarks?
Thank you.
Kath?
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your attention and interest. We appreciate it. We love our city.